Hi guys, welcome back to 4th grade Math Corner. This is Module 4, Lesson 4. Our learning target is today I will identify and draw parallel lines. So we've talked about lines, we've talked about angles, we've talked about rays, things like that. And today and yesterday in the lesson we talked about perpendicular lines and intersecting lines that cross. Today we're going to talk about parallel lines. So parallel lines are different than perpendicular and intersecting lines. So if you notice these lines that I have here, what do you notice? So I notice that there's two line segments. There's line segment AB and there's line segment CD. And right now there's space between them. They're not touching anywhere. But if I continue these lines, if I extend them on and on and on and on, let's extend them with a different color so we can tell the difference. If I made this line continue and go on and on and on, and then this line continue and go on and on and on and on, would they touch? Yes, eventually, after they continue to extend, they will touch. Remember, we call lines that cross intersecting lines or perpendicular lines. So looking at where these would cross, do they make a perfect right angle? No. So these lines, although they don't look like here they're going to touch, they will eventually. So these are still intersecting lines. But let's look at another set of lines. Let's look at line segment EF and GH. So here I have line segment EF and here I have line segment GH. And then I look at the distance they are apart from each other. If I extended these, do you think they'd touch? Go back to this line segment. I'll even erase all this confusion. When I looked here and here, do you notice that the space between them changes? It's not an equal distance apart. That helps me know that eventually, if I extend them, they will touch at some point. But look at these line segments. They're an equal distance apart in all the places. No matter where I draw or where I measure my line, they're an equal distance apart throughout the whole thing. That tells me if I were to extend these lines and have them keep going on and on and on forever, because that's what lines do, go on and on forever, they would never touch. Since line segment EF and line segment GH could go on and on and on and on and never touch, we call these parallel. Parallel means that they can go on and on and on forever and never touch. The symbol we use to abbreviate this are just two parallel lines. Remember, perpendicular, we had a perpendicular line. Parallel lines, to say that EF and GH are parallel, we put two parallel lines in between them. Never will touch. No matter how far I extend them, they just won't. So let's look at line segment IJ and line segment LK. What do we notice? I notice that they're not touching now, so they could be parallel, but here they're really far apart and here they're really close, which tells me if I were to extend them or one of them, eventually they would cross, which means these are not parallel, they are intersecting. So they are not parallel, they are not perpendicular, they will intersect eventually. So I would say no, they are not parallel. Let's look at lines in shapes though, because remember, geometry is about looking at shapes or figures and their attributes or what makes them. So I see that there are 4 line segments here that meet to make a rectangle. I have line segment AB, I have line segment BC, I have line segment CD, and I have line segment AD. So let's see what we can determine about these lines. Let's look at 2 of the lines first. Let's look at line segment AB with line segment BC. So if I look at AB and BC, what do I notice about them? Well, I noticed that they do cross, so are they parallel? No, they are not parallel, but they do make a perfect box or a perfect right angle, so they are perpendicular to each other. Since line segment AB and BC are perpendicular, I know that line segment AB and AD are going to also be perpendicular because they also meet and make a right angle. But are there any parallel? Are there any lines on this line? Are there any line segments on this figure that are parallel? Well, I notice that AB and DC are an equal distance apart. If I made lines, they're the same distance. So that means line segment AB is parallel to line segment DC. Are there any other line segments that are parallel? Let's see. Here, AD looks like it's parallel to BC. They are about an equal distance apart. So that tells me they will never touch. So I would also say line segment AD is parallel to line segment BC. On your problem set today, you will be, just like yesterday, identifying parallel lines, though today, in real images. You will also be drawing them, so you will be given a plane, that means like a sheet of paper, with one line, and it will ask you to draw, and there might even be two lines, and it asks you to draw lines that are parallel. So if these are two lines and I need lines that are parallel, I would just make sure that they are equal distance apart and they never touch. Here, I would make a line segment that is equal distance apart and that will never touch. These will end up extending and they will cross each other, but the lines that they are next to, they will not cross, so they are parallel. You will also, on the back of your problem set, find shapes that you will be looking for parallel lines in. If they have them, please go ahead and write what line segments are parallel. If they do not, you will just say no parallel line segments. If you have any questions, please let your teacher know.